So welcome, everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about financial infrastructures for startups. And my guess would be that none of you are here because you actually have a passion for financial infrastructure. My guess is that you're here because you don't only want to start a company, you want to build a company. And for better or worse, those are two very different things and require different focus and different skill sets. On financial infrastructure, why it does matter is, first and foremost, when you do this straight out of the gate, you will save a lot of time and money. And it doesn't need to be difficult, and we'll walk you through it today. If you do it later, not only is it a lot more complex to do it when you already have things in place, you have more data, you have more customers. This goes very rapidly when things get complicated. It's also extremely difficult for somebody who has worked in a big company or maybe built something and realized they didn't do it right. Taking something down, undoing something is incredibly hard. Not only time-consuming, but you'll hit people, roadblocks, people with opinions that want to do it differently or don't want to let go. So if you do this right from the start, you'll benefit tremendously while you're building your company. So on that note, what we're going to look at today, we're going to look at a few things that are going on there right now. You're probably experiencing a lot of the same things than we do. The importance of being numbers-driven. We'll share a little bit about our journey at OneCloud and hope that you can piggyback of what we learned and what we do. No need to reinvent the wheel. And then we have a few things on where you could start. These are mere suggestions, things that we've chosen and why. And then we'll take a little bit of like, what's in it for me? What will be your return on investment when you do decide to build a financial infrastructure? So about OneCloud, a little bit our company. We're a SaaS technology company. We focus on connecting enterprise applications. So our customers are all other businesses, generally very large companies. So we've only started in 2017, but we have about 20 plus Fortune 1000 companies. Big companies like Lyft use our technology, for example, or Viacom. And then we have a bunch of smaller companies that use us to get the job done. We're just seed funded, which means that we do have some money, but we don't swim in it, which sort of like makes this, forces our hand a little bit to be very mindful, but I think it's a very healthy place to be. There's plenty of companies with a lot of money, and I've worked at them before, that ran out of money faster. They can blink their eyes and very little to show for in the end. So to some extent, this is a blessing in disguise. We're 100% powered by AWS, and that's why we were invited here today, and we're happy to share that journey with them. So about myself, I worked virtually at all stages of companies, different industries. My background is in agricultural engineering, and that's where it stops a little bit because I never worked actually in agriculture. I was poached by a company, maybe you know it, Lehman Brothers, straight after I graduated. And although that wasn't a great journey for a lot of us there, what I learned at Lehman was the importance of technology, even if they weren't a technology company. Back in 2000, they rocked it from an IT department. I have not seen anything like Lehman since, from an IT perspective, at least a financial institution. But that's a long time ago. I worked at small companies, big companies. I worked at startups in technologies. I worked at a company called IBM. You see all the spectrums of what's right and wrong. Currently, I work at OneCloud. I'm virtually everything when it's not related to coding. So you name it, but my most important job is that I'm master of coin. I need to know at any point how much money comes in, how much money comes out. Without that, we can have the best developers, the best product, but we will not have a company. To do that, we manage, of course, corporate books, expenses. We have clients and vendors. We need to report the numbers. And this all needs to happen really fast. We don't have a lot of employees. So when I come in the morning, things need to be ready to go and make decisions on, not just for me, but for the entire company. So what we do see what's going on out there. And when you are managing a company, you're thinking about it, there's a lot of moving parts. The world is very complicated. Data volumes are growing. That is great. We can use them, we can analyze them, but we need to manage them. They all come in different systems, and those systems are not always connected. So inconsistencies across systems is a big challenge that we face. And then we have our investors, and hopefully we'll get more and more investors. And they expect not only us to report when we have, of course, our quarterly meetings, but sometimes we get ad hoc requests. They don't want to wait too long. The faster we respond, the more it is a testimony that we have things under control. But they also want explanations behind the numbers. They just don't want to have high level. They want us to be able to drill down to the lowest level whenever they need to. And at all times, I cannot reiterate this enough. I think this will resonate with a lot of startups. I need to know how much money we have, and I don't need to know it under current circumstances. I need to know it under different scenarios so we can actually make decisions. So a few simple truths, and you can all chuckle at this, but I cannot repeat this enough, and people sometimes forget it. There are only 24 hours in a day. And you want to spend them wisely. You want to spend them building your business. And every dollar can only be spent once. Time is money. Money is time. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here, too. So when we spend things at our company, and we do take this a little serious, sometimes it frustrates people, but spending for us is two things, at least for this presentation. It's money, we can spend money, and we only spend money if we feel it's at value. Now, hosting a great party for our employees can add value too, but that's not what we're talking here about today, although we do try to be mindful that we don't spend it on caviar lunches and champagne. If we do a lunch, it needs to lift the spirits, not just be a big line item on our credit card at the end of the month. So, two things here. And you all know this, but we sometimes forget in the heat of the moment when we're all moving fast and we make decisions and we're ready to buy something or buy a system or hire a person. So when we do spend money, it either needs to save more money, or earn money when you talk to a client, that's obvious, or it needs to save time. So that means when I buy a system, so a good example, we recently added Carta. We'll talk about it a little later, but that's for cap table management. And up until that time, I could easily manage all my shareholders and employee stock option plans in Excel spreadsheet. But we bought Carta, and immediately with buying Carta, two things came along. They did a 409A valuation for us, so if you've not done that already, if you need to officially price your stock options, you need to get one. Those don't come cheap. $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, depending on your company size. With Carta, it was included, and it was a good enough 409A that for us, that would suffice. So by buying Carta, I immediately got the benefit of that 409A. I also, which I never realized they had, but they managed my whole board pack. So board minutes, board resolutions, employee stock option templates. I'm not doing a pitch here for Carta, but well, it sounds like. But normally, I would have to pick up the phone to Perkins Coie, which is not a cheap law firm, and have them draft it for us. Carta saved me more on my first day than I'd spent an entire year with them. So this is a very clear example, but every time you make this decision, be careful that you do it. Or when it saves you time. Obviously, you cannot do everything yourself. You will need to make investments in efficiency. Automation, integration of data is a big one of those, that you're not manually uploading your files or updating your spreadsheets. It's a big part of the presentation later. Similar applies to time, so I'm not going to spend that much time on saving time, but when saving time, and I see that a lot with myself and with smaller companies, you start doing something and you build your spreadsheet and you keep maintaining it. Sometimes take a step back and see if you should at least think beyond what's right in front of you. Because if you do something, try to make it, at least if it's a repeatable task, you have to do it every day. you're doing something wrong. Try to either make sure you batch it up, or you can combine certain things, but that you create synergies between the time that you spent. Otherwise, it will work in your first 3 months, but after a year, if you're a serious company, you will really, really run out fast, because you just cannot keep up with all these little tasks. So plan ahead. Try not to live too much in the moment when you plan your infrastructure. Take a step back and look at what you want to accomplish. And you don't need to look 10 years out, but look a year or 2 years out. So what do we see out there, and this may look familiar? Everybody loves Excel and Google. Yeah, we just go, we know it, we can do it while we're still working on our other jobs, we can put our plans in there, our budgets, and start crunching the numbers. This has made Google and Excel the largest GL spreadsheets in the world. They're not meant for planning and budgeting, but we get caught in them, and then you get enthusiastic and you're smart, so you maybe build an Access database, do some VB on it, and before you know, this is the core of your organization. And it's problematic because there's a lot of things that those systems don't offer. So they're disconnected after a while, because you don't have one spreadsheet, you have 2, 3, 10, 20. You even forget what you've done. You have no version and audit control. And this, if you grow as a company, this will become really important. You'll need to stand by your numbers, and you have to show who did what, where, when, and how. They're time-consuming. Because you insert one line, you need to insert another 20 spreadsheets. We all know this, yeah? But the last point I over and over see with teams where I put my foot down on Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets, they're not only difficult to scale and share, you cannot transition them. They're very, very personal. Somebody leaves, you have to start over. You, as a founder, you start building this out. Now you're ready to hand over this task because you can hire this new employee. You have to start over. It's all lost. Nobody can, or it's very, very difficult to transition a sheet like that. And then, of course, we have all these things that come up all the time, what needs to be answered. Expense run rate, yeah? How fast am I going? If I plan out, if I hire more people, I can hire a salesperson, I know what the salary will be, but how about their travel expenses? How about their laptop? An engineer will cost more in equipment than a marketing person, but how will that affect my cash flow? What's my projected sales flow? And we can different scenarios. What is committed sales? If I'm a bit more optimistic, what does it look like? So you have scenario planning there. For software vendors, I don't know how many here are in the software, but you have your waterfalls. So you have to amortize your licenses over 12, 24, 36 months. That's actually relatively easy to do in Excel. It requires a lot of maintenance. It's harder to model, but extremely important because this drives all your revenue reporting. High pipeline deals, a little bit on the sales floor projection, but how will it drive my ability to scale? And on and on. You have all these questions that need to be managed. Little less important in our business, but still one that's these things give you headaches, the things change all the time. You have the Wayfair ruling, and all of a sudden, as a software SaaS company where we're relatively safe, now we have to charge sales taxes. And they're different per street, per state, per city, per street that I build to. So if I have to look that up every single time, I'm just lost. So these things keep changing all the time. And if you keep doing everything manual and have to keep tabs on everything, you will not have time to actually work on what you want to work on. So in our company, what do we see as our most important functional areas? We have, of course, our customer data, where everything comes in, where we have our deals and prospects, and everything is listed there. Then we have our finance and planning, and both those really drive our reporting. So depending on our deals, our customer data, we feed our finance systems and our planning systems. That affects how we can run our operations, if we can scale them, how fast we can scale them, And of course, everything leads to the reporting to the board or internally or to marketing or salespeople so they can take appropriate action. So to start this journey, maybe go back a little bit, but what you do get when you build your interconnected systems, and it took us a while to build them, and we'll look at that, but we now know all departments in our company know what is going on at all times. So it's not that we have to get together, have a meeting to discuss the current state of affairs. Everybody knows what the latest numbers are, where we stand with clients, where we stand with our money. It increases confidence in the business, but also in each other. So there's never any second guessing about if these numbers were updated, what the latest version are, and how we can act upon them. So to start this journey, so everybody needs to start somewhere, and everybody here in this room will probably be in a different stage in their company, but always start with the current state of affairs. And just be honest, it's not a very difficult exercise, but where are you right now? What are you doing? And then where do you want to go? It might actually be harder to determine what you're currently doing than where you want to go. Then you have to indeed define the data flows, and that will take a bit of work because you need to sort of determine what will be your single source of truth, what will feed the other systems, where do you go back to if you need to update your systems. And this is, the later you do this in the company, the more conflict you can get, because people always will defend their source. But if you start early on, and if you're even just by yourself, you set the tone of what the single source of truth is. And then you have to identify the systems to support those flows. And that is not an easy task per se. There's a lot of systems out there, and they all compete with each other, and they're all best in class, and they're all best practices, and they're all happy to take your money. So what we did at our company, and I suggest everybody does it, no matter how small you are, start with the basics, and the absolute basic, I think, is an accounting package. The most boring part you get out of the way straight away. They're cheap. A lot of them are even free or some of them are free for startups. And you can just, it also forces you to think about your company. What is your revenue? You have to actually create a chart of accounts, so you have to name it. Like, I'm going to have one revenue stream or two. Is it just product or services? Do I have one product or 10 products? So it makes you think about how you're going to market your product eventually too. And then you need to think about your expenses. And if you haven't done this yet, it's a little bit daunting because there's a lot of expense categories that you might not even thought of before you started your company. And just because they're there, you think, oh, well, I have to account for this too. So it's a very good, healthy exercise to start there. Very good second step, and if you don't want to buy a system for that, you could possibly do this in an Excel spreadsheet, but a CRM system. But I would recommend you look into one as well, where you start gathering your client data. And it also thinks same thing, you say, who are my clients, and what businesses or what segments do they belong to? So you can use this later, and you will use this later, to drive your marketing strategy. So here's not just entering clients, but is this client selling my interest in my blue product or in my red product? Is he based in the US or is he based in Canada? Are they a Fortune 500 company or are they small or mid-size? So if you build out these criteria in your CRM system, you can leverage them later into your marketing system, and you don't need to think about it right then. And again, it all defines your business thinking about where you want to go. And then there's, of course, a bunch of documents, whether it's the simple ones, incorporation, but they will keep coming. And make sure you keep them all and you organize them all. And there's a little bit old school, at least from my end. We still use Google Drive for documents, and you can use it for a lot of things, also for initially if you don't build out your infrastructure for some of your flat files. But I would suggest, even in the times of search engines, think of a naming convention. Whether it's your date first, and then your company name, and then your client name. Be consistent, because the more people you're going to bring on, you don't want to have them like try to find where everything is. If you can just point them to a well-organized folder structure, people will hit the ground running a lot faster, a lot better. So after we're done with this, and I think this speaks for itself, you can then start thinking about your centralization and integration technologies. And this is where the real value, where you'll get the real value if you get this right. So, and what we obviously work in systems and integration, so this is a little part of our DNA, but data hub is the buzzword probably of tonight. So in a data hub, you centralize all your measurements. So whether that is your products or your customer data. So, but you always go back to your measurements, which you define, and then later you leverage them. So make sure in your data hub that all your clients' names are in your data hub. So there's only one place, no matter what that data hub is. If it's like a Google Sheet, or it's a multi-dimensional database, one source for your client data, one source for your vendor data, one source for your employee names, one source for your product, one. And from there, you start spreading it out to your different systems. And again, the sooner you set this up, the better, because then everybody can build out. So you add a product, you only add it in one place, in your data hub, and people can go and pick it up from there. And you have to be very disciplined. Violators have to do the dishes or the trash for the week. That's where we start. That's one strike. And then we go on to the really fun part, where you really go to business modeling, where you have all this set up, you know what you're selling, you have your deals, you have your customers, you have your finances, you have all your integrations and centralization set up. Now you can get really to the modeling, where you can start leveraging all this data for financial planning, forecasting, reporting, marketing campaigns that you can drive of this. And you have a lot of corporate governance that you get with it. If you really go from that startup phase to playing in the big leagues, you're going to be in the big leagues a lot faster than you think. You get one investor through the door, you have a VC investor, you're frankly in the big leagues. So you need to be ready for that. This was not the slide I created. This is something that we do, and I'll talk to it. But if you're not a real fan of data hubs or something, but this is how it really looks in reality, and even for small companies. But mastering your data or your facts will pay off anytime. So accurate data, like apart from your great product, accurate data is going to be your biggest asset. And again, you need to really manage it. You need to protect it with your life. This data is almost always multidimensional. A customer always has a product and a country and a sales manager and a price and then profitability. But that also then ties in to your cost of hosting or your cost of goods sold. So I need to determine all these factors, all from my facts data data hub, and then run with it. So we really have this set up in a way that it really ties, and it speaks for itself, but that it ties into each other. So I can actually see, like, I have a bunch of partners, but which customers belong to those partners, and which products are they selling, and into which market is which partner active, or and sit their customers in. Are they stepping out of their market? So we have partnerships that are just the US, but they bring a Canadian customer. I need to know that happens. So all these things touch each other. And then eventually, of course, it feeds our employees and departments, because depending on how well all these factors do, we need to hire more people. If I hire an extra engineer, how is that going to affect my features of my platform? How more can I sell, and which partner should I alert when I add a certain feature to my product? So the basics. So where did we start? Sorry on the clicker here, but we did start with an accounting system, and maybe one that's not very well known, but surprisingly big when we did found it. We started with Zoho. In the past, I'd always worked with QuickBooks at Starbucks at startups. I never worked at Starbucks. My daughter does, which is great. I get free coffee every week. So we selected Zoho. And I'll talk later a little bit on why we did it, but that was our accounting system. Then the next thing that we did, and we did that in our first week or first month, we did start it with HubSpot CRM system. So we started. No Salesforce people here then? Great product, by the way. And we did use Google Drive, and we still do for all our document management systems. So this is where we started. This is where we spent our first few months while we were building software on the sidelines. We were setting this up and making sure that as soon as we were ready to go to market, it took us about 6 months to have our product ready for GA. So we had time to set this up and hit the ground running when we did go live. Now, it didn't stop there, obviously. Oh, here a little bit. OK, great. Forget I put on this thing. So this is really cheap. And actually, I might even exaggerate with the $20. Most of these programs offer a free version, at least for a limited amount of time, or for startups. So, but it could also be a little bit more, depending on the bells and whistles. But expense shouldn't be a factor here that should stop you from rolling this out. I'd say productivity low here, because eventually I need to go to high, but this was a big step. Then afterwards, we did automate our data flow. So instead of what I had to do up until this time, I had to whatever the reporting frequency was, initially wasn't so high, but I had to go into my accounting system, I had to download my data, then I had to go into HubSpot, I had to download the data in separate files, and then load them and combine them, and then I had my combined data, and I could work with that. Then we started automating it, so at least, and we use at least our own product, eat your own shit. We use OneCloud to automate and integrate. There's different options out there, but as we have this sitting on the shelf, obviously we use this. And this made already a big difference. At least every day, an hour and a half, at the least of my day was given back, and that was when everything would go right. Because if you do things manually, things shift around, things change. So now we had this automated. It wouldn't be touched, so it went seamlessly. And I came in the morning, and my data was waiting there for me. It was not a lot of data, but it was there. A little bit more expensive, because you need to get a few more bells and whistles on the Zoho system to get to those reports. It's not included. Productivity a lot better. So. And yeah, we were off to a good start here. And then we made the big step. We actually, and that's where it comes to when spending money, and when we were a bit reluctant, but we purchased a relatively new technology called Anaplan. There's other alternatives out there too, but we chose Anaplan to build a real data hub and starting planning and reporting. Who's familiar with Anaplan? Okay, host analytics? Okay, so we're in the same bucket here. So not that's at least then I'm not stepping on too many toes. But what it does do, it really replaces what the spreadsheets that we often use. So it creates this platform where you work from a single source of truth. You can include a lot of versions. It feeds into all this model. So you're really off to real planning. So we run different scenarios. So we have 3 scenarios that we constantly run based upon the software that we sell, or maybe when we contemplate raising money. And then we run those scenarios, and then we can say, okay, this is what we will hire under this scenario, this is what we will do under the other scenario, and we can present them to investors too. We can say, hey, if you only want to shell out X amount of money, this is our growth plan. If you're willing to dig a little deeper in your pocket, this is your growth plan. And internally it works too for hiring, or when we make even small spending decisions, says, hey, we're on this scenario right now, it doesn't work. But we change salaries, we change costs, and it feeds everything. So I only need to go to one place. If I have an employee that needed a raise, I update it there, and everything across the company changes. So I know, or I win a big customer, so everything changes. I didn't close a deal that I thought I would close. Everything changes. So I don't need to go and open a gazillion spreadsheets and figure out what the effect is. I know exactly my hiring plan changes. Says, oh, I lost this account. I had planned to hire in January. Now that's pushed out to March. But it was a fair investment that we made. But it is saving us, has saved and continues to save us a lot of time. So it went up, you see, from about $100 a month, we went up to $2,000 a month. Now, $2,000 a month is, well, it's a lot of money, but it's $24,000 a year. If I'd have to, at this stage, keep producing all this information on a daily or weekly basis, I at least need to hire half FTE, at the very minimum. Probably a full FTE, or I need to stop doing what I'm doing that should be my job. So if you look at it like that, that's like initially an investment, but maybe we got off on the cheap here. So then we start building it out a little bit here. So we recently added Carta, and it's still a dotted line, but Carta is going to be connected with our Anaplan. So based upon how well we do as a company, eventually we'll have to have that 409A redone. It will change the valuation of the company. It will change our employee stock option plan, and then it will drive what we built in Anaplan, the ability to offer people different compensation packages. We have the Avalara. That's not such a difficult integration, but it's a cheap, relatively cheap one to add. And I would recommend, if you do sell online, that you look into a sales tax management tool, because if they come after you, just picking up the phone to your lawyer is going to be more expensive than just using one of these sales tax management softwares. Then we're also in the process of adding Workiva, and now we're getting maybe a little bit advanced, but Workiva is standardized reporting. In this case, it's board reports for us, but it will go across that. But in Workiva, everything, it's a little bit similar. Everything, you set up your reports, the data it feeds, and then your reports update automatically. It's used by publicly listed companies a lot that have to do SEC filing, so not every month, end of month, they would have to go to a 100-page report and make sure that all the numbers are updated in the right place. Workiva does that automatically for you. So we're in the process of rolling that out. And the whole premise of this infrastructure is that in the end, that when we come into the office, that we have all the information available at the start of the date. And that at the end of the day, we know exactly what happened. And now maybe you don't need to know it every day, but right now, but you will at one point. And then you can instruct your team based upon what you know. And if you have to do this all manually, that's the only thing you're going to be doing. Let me see. Oh, what is it? Oh, I had to, yeah. We had one more even. But that's probably, actually, I think that's mostly applicable for almost everybody. And you can do this even without, you don't need to have Workiva in place or Anaplan if you don't want to. But we have started to collect, and I would assume that some of you already do that, we have started to collect platform stats, so our users. What functionality do they use the most? What items do they click on the most? Where do they run in the most issues? When we have tickets get filed. Are they coming from one company or are they touching on a certain topic? So we're harvesting that right now, and that will all then feed again in our central data hub into Anaplan, and that will feed our product management team so they know what to focus on. And it will feed our support team so they know maybe that there's our customer success team. If it's always the same customer, that maybe we need to spend a little bit more time with that particular customer, fly out there, spend a day, or engage them more, maybe more training. So those platform stats eventually are going to drive our customer support and development efforts. And then how did we, so there's a bunch of systems, and this is by no means like, this is one size fits all, this is what we chose, and we might switch out systems over time, but it was a stake in the ground. So we, when we first started on our accounting systems, we were almost, we were ready to go with QuickBooks because it's very solid software, it's not expensive, we have experience in it, I actually really like it. We ended up choosing Zoho because it had an integrated expense management system and time management system. And that for us at that stage, that was important. You can get that with QuickBooks too, but it's a bit more expensive and it requires a little bit more integration effort. So at that stage, we chose Zoho. Zoho is it's probably not the GL system that you want to use when you're 5 or 10 years in at the company. So at one point, I will see us transitioning off Zoho. It might be to QuickBooks, it might be to NetSuite or another GL system. On the customer relationship, on the CRM side, so these were the options we considered. Zoho has a CRM system. It's very, very affordable, so if you need to start somewhere, definitely look there. But it was a bit more restricted. Then we had the two prime offerings. We had HubSpot and Salesforce. Worked with Salesforce before, also great technology. Chose HubSpot for a few reasons. We favor the underdog because we are one too. The pricing was right. Salesforce had gotten surprisingly expensive over the years. And their support, their onboarding support was amazing. Maybe we got lucky, I don't know, but it was very smooth sailing with them. Now, the other two didn't really get a chance because we never chose them, so maybe their onboarding support was amazing too. On finance, on integration systems, here are a few, and maybe I should have added a Glue from Amazon, but you can but we didn't look at Glue, we looked at, we constantly look at these four because we're the first one, and Zapier, Trio, Workado operate somewhat in the same space as us. Obviously, we're going to use our own software, but our software is also a little bit of different focus. So, for example, the Anaplan integration and applications used in the office of the CFO, that's what our sweet spot is. So, Oracle, IBM integration, Anaplan, Host Analytics, Workado, where the rest are more downstream applications. So, surprise, we chose OneCloud. On cap table management, I already gave them a nice plug, but we chose Carta. They had a great offering, very no-nonsense, price was right. I think that took us all but 4 hours to decide to go with Carta. And then on financial modeling and planning, when you're ready for this is quite a big step, because not only are those applications a bit more expensive, so you're not going to do that straight out of the gate. They also require that you have a little bit of an understanding of multidimensionality. There's lots of courses out there, but it's a bit of a learning curve. You, of course, can hire a consultant at $250 an hour, and they gladly come and do it for you. But I don't think that's the space we generally operate in. But it definitely warrants it. If you do get something like this up and running, it will pay off greatly. But just, you have to manage your budget. But if you're at the stage where you are getting funding, whether it's seed or VC, and you don't already have this, I think you should put it very high up on your wish list. We chose Anaplan because we have a little bit of a background in Anaplan, made it easier for us. But Centage and Host Analytics are both great alternatives and come at a little different price point, lower price point. What I can say for all these technologies, though, do not be afraid to ask for discounts. Don't even be afraid to ask for free your first year. Free you might not always get, but a lot of these programs are willing to work with you. Sometimes they have programs already, like Amazon has for startup companies. Some of them do have, HubSpot, for example, has one. But even if they don't have, they sometimes feel they should have one. So they're really, our experience is that salespeople go to bat for you to give you a good deal if you make the right pitch and there's growth in there, where they can justify the deal. On reporting, there's tons of options there too. These are just a few. We chose to leverage Anaplan's already good built-in reporting, and then we also leverage Amazon Redshift. But you can use Tableau. They also have a very good price point available where you can build out a lot of your reporting and analytics. Workiva is... we're starting to get in the big leagues. Full disclosure, we are a partner with Workiva, so they actually granted us this license, so that was great for us. They actually embed our technology, so they sell OneCloud as part of their platform. It's a fantastic tool to have. You can do standardized reporting somewhere else too. We're lucky to have this, but also with a company like Workiva, ask for discounts as a startup. And then on tax management, I think this is an easy one. This won't take you a lot of time or won't cost you a lot of money to add that. We chose Avalara over TaxJar because it was more plug and play. So they have all these plugins. They have one with Soho. With TaxJar was a little cheaper, but I had to do a little bit more work on our end, and the price difference didn't justify what I felt was the additional work for TaxJar. Okay, and on our journey, and this is of course different for everybody, and you can work these numbers, you can play with these numbers. That's like a great thing of charge. But so when we look at the cost of our systems, it's obviously going off, and now it's tapering a little bit. I don't expect us to make a lot more investments the next 12 to 18 months at least. So this is a little bit where we sit. We pay a little over $40,000 a year for all our systems, which again, it's a lot of money, but if you express it in FTEs, you're getting off cheap. And it's not about taking away jobs, but these are jobs that nobody wants to do. Yeah? You need people with a brain to do these, and they're going to run for the hills. And if you pay them $45,000, you'll never see them again, even if they were your friend. So this is just getting the most out of your investment. And for us, this is just a little bit to give you a feel, but the ROI chart, that's of course very different, calculated with a conservative or maybe excessive, depending on you think, how much we would pay a person an hour if we would to hire them for them, compared with the hours that we save. And we feel that making an investment in your systems is more than worth it. You'll earn it back so rapidly. I think we just always face initially sort of distress when you start and you have so little money that every dollar that you spent is one too many because you don't know what's going to come down the pike. But that's where, back to the earlier point, you have to take a step back and decide what dollar is worth spending. And there's a good number of dollars that are worth spending. And that's a little bit the backdrop of this conversation. So don't be afraid to make investments. Just make them wisely. You don't need to shell out the big bucks all at once. If you start small with that GL system and that CRM system, even if it's the basic free version, you can accomplish a lot. And you're already halfway. So like, I'm a runner, and the hard part still to this day I find about running is getting out of bed and putting my shoes on. As soon as I've done that and I'm out of the door, it doesn't matter if I run 3 miles or 10 miles, or I'm off to the races. And it's, I find a little bit same with systems. Put that infrastructure and put your shoes on. Get out of the door, do it right, and you can go for a very long time. So little bit, so if you just, some pointers, and you can go anywhere you want, but HubSpot does have a free version. So you can just contact them and see what it offers and if it works for you. And for Zoho, accounting is not quite free, but it started at $9 a month for us. Right now, so to give you, we're on the professional edition, and I pay the massive amount of $290 a year. So even if you want to scale, it's not going to be that much. On HubSpot, we recently expanded and got every possible module under the sun, so it's costing a little bit more, but it allows us to build a fully integrated CRM with our marketing efforts as well. So, and then at least we want to help everybody to get going. So if you are ready to automate and integrate your applications too, that first step, we're one of these companies that do have an early startup program inspired by Amazon Web Services. So if you're a startup, you're founded less than 5 years ago, you don't have that much funding, because if you do, we'd like to get a little bit of it. But you can leverage us for free. So just, you can reach out to us, to me, or just, you can sign up even here, and we'll reach out to you, and then we'll take it from there. On hire contacts, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit here on questions because I get these a lot. When to hire contracts and when to hire a CFO. So initially, unless bookkeeping is your passion, if you have a lot of experience, just hire a bookkeeper. Bookkeepers, there are a lot of them around. I can make some suggestions if you want, but for $50, $60 an hour, you can hire a bookkeeper. They'll spend maybe 10 hours with you and set up that GL systems or QuickBooks, and they'll set it up the right way. So, and then you can put them on speed dial and call them every month when you have a few questions. Most people can figure this out for 99%, but once in a while there's this thing that you don't really know what to do. It's good to have one on call, and don't spend 10 hours trying to figure it out when you have a good resources that's not super expensive. Then, sorry, the contract CFO. We don't have one yet. We had one at our previous company, and we're getting a lot of emails of CFO that's making themselves available. It's very valuable, and at one point, we'll have to hire a CFO, and there's no room or there's no need for us to have a full-time CFO yet, and maybe not for some time. So contract CFO are very valuable. But when you do, really, really sit down with them and ask them how they feel they will add value to the company. That it's not just a $5,000 a month line item, and the only thing they do is sign off on your financials, that you're $60 an hour bookkeeper prepared. Important, but make sure you get the right one, and you don't need to be in the rush to get one. Nobody faulted us for not having one. They find it way more important that we have a CPA looking at our books and doing our tax filings than having a CFO on staff. If you go public, next few months you should get one. And then with outsourcing, it's a little bit the same thing. We'd like to focus on our core task. but when you outsource all sorts of tasks, make sure you understand the process first before you outsource it. Now, there's some things I really cannot do. So we recently reviewed the OEM agreement with Workiva, which was a very big agreement that was not something I felt comfortable negotiating out. So we engaged our lawyer there to do it, but not before we understood the agreement first. And then you can box people in. But it's the same either with bookkeeping or with developers. Like if you just blank outsource, they're probably not going to do what you want them to do. They're going to write you big invoices and you'll have to pay it. And they might even take you off track. So just important, but again, same as with the CFO, maybe a little bit first, and if you feel you trust them, a little bit more later. And then as our business, stick to your core. Of course, contradict the outsourcing, but that's where we go with our automation. Most of your time will be spent anyhow on your data management if it's not to your core business. So if you have your system set up, you have it automated, you come in the morning and you have most of your data available, and it doesn't take an act of Congress to update something, you actually will have plenty of time to stick to your core business and spending actually your money where it counts.